There's 2:15. I'm going to get started. My name is Lavartis Goggins II. I am your guest speaker for today. Dr. Neil Barnett asked me to speak to you today regarding rites of passage. I don't know exactly how much you talked about rites of passage before today, but I'll ask you go over rites of passage, talk about the basic concepts in rites of passage. We'll talk about some examples of rites of passage as it pertains to the maturation process, particularly, I'm assuming, adolescents becoming a child into adulthood. We'll talk about those ideas and concepts. And then we will hopefully get into some discussions regarding that and do all that before 3:05, correct? Okay, good. For reference, I guess this is my name. Well, more so than Mr. Goggins. I also should tell you that the young person in the back of the class is my son. We have a little project going, so he's going to run the camcorder. But for reference, I do know Dr. Burnett has included some of the things that we're going to talk about today on some future tests, typically, so that will be a hint. My name is Lavartis Goggins II. And what we're going to talk about is rites, R-I-T-S-E-S, okay? How many people are familiar with the term rites of passage? Anybody? One? Anybody else? Okay. Tell me what you're familiar with.
Do what?
In terms of the concept of rites of passage, what is when we talk about rites of passage? Rites of passage.
Say graduating from high school.
Say graduating from high school. That's a rites of passage. What makes that a rites of passage?
Because you're transitioning from one thing in your life to the next.
Transitioning from one thing in your life to the next. Essentially, rites of passage. We know rites is a term meaning rituals. These are various rituals that include ceremonies, those kind of things that mark a transition from one stage of life to another stage of life. Okay, one state of consciousness to another stage of consciousness. We tend to call these things turning points in your life. That you had a significant event in your life that you recognize as a marker that transitions you from one point of being to another state of being. That was a rites of passage in many ways. But the rites of passage process has a structure, has a format, and these things tend to be universal. It's one of the few things that when we talk about human beings, we can say that exists for everybody. Does anybody else familiar with any other rites of passage? We talk about high school graduation. Anything else? Manhood to boyhood to manhood, childhood to adulthood. Definitely is a rites of passage, a process that takes place. What are some of the specific rituals? Anybody have any know any specific rituals?
In Romania, when you turn 1 year old, they cut a lock of hair
Okay.
off.
They cut a lock of hair off. Okay.
And they make you pick from like a tray of things, like 3 things. You're supposed to say what you're going to be like when you're an adult.
Okay. Anybody else? How many people heard of bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah? Okay. That's a rites of passage. Are you familiar with the ceremony? Anybody? Okay. Let me see. What I'll do is I'll talk about, I'm trying to get a feel for where you are on this. Help me out with some of the things that you've been discussing in terms of adolescence. Where are you in your discussions on adolescence?
We just had an exam on depression and suicide and disorders, eating disorders.
Exam
Just on
suicide, depression, and eating disorders.
I know that's
Okay. Okay. Is that the reason for the rather drab? Okay. Give me some understanding about then why are you studying adolescence? Why are you in this class? What's the purpose of adolescence in that sense? Why are you here? Yes, ma'am.
I'm here because I'm going to be working with adolescents.
You're working with adolescents how?
I'm a probation officer.
Probation officer, okay. Okay. How many potential probation officers? Okay, just one, okay. Why are you here? Yes.
Because I need it for my major.
Which is?
Psychology.
Psychology, okay. And you hope to be doing what with
I'll figure that out later.
Okay. Okay. Give me a feel for who I'm talking to. I want to make this apply as much as I can to who y'all are. Okay. How many juniors are we having here? Juniors? Seniors? Okay. Sophomores? Freshmen? Any freshmen? It's not freshman level? Okay. Majors? Psychology majors? What other kind of majors? You, sir?
Me?
Yes.
General studies.
General studies, all right. Me too. Power to the people, all right. You? Yes.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice, okay.
Nursing.
Nursing. Nursing.
Journalism.
Journalism, okay.
Biology.
Biology. What you want to do with it?
Maybe teach.
Maybe teach, okay.
I'm a psychology major.
Psychology major, what you want to do?
Child psychology.
Child psychology, okay.
I'm an electronic media production and psychology major.
Okay.
I have double major.
And what you want to do with that?
The reason basically I'm a psychology major is because I only need 25 more credits to get a degree. But electronic media production, I'll probably work more with documentary stuff within third world countries and things like that.
Okay. Excellent, okay.
Public relations.
Public relations?
Stuff.
Okay.
I don't have one.
No shame, no shame.
I'm double major.
Double. Justice studies? Psych major? What you want to do with it? Not sure, okay. Advertising, okay. Yeah. What you want to do with it? In school? Okay. Broadcasting, okay. You, ma'am?
Business management is my major.
Spanish is your major?
Business management.
Management is Spanish, okay. I'm heard Spanish, okay. Business management is your major, okay. What kind of business do you want to manage?
Oh yeah.
I don't know yet, okay.
Education.
Education? Secondary, elementary? Secondary, teaching what?
History.
History, okay.
Education.
Education? Where?
School health.
School health, okay. We got everybody else, right? I don't think I got you.
Psychology.
Psychology doing what?
STEM studying cognitive development and eyewitness memory.
Cognitive development in what?
Eyewitness memory.
Eyewitness memory. Okay. Good. Okay. We're going to talk about rites of passage. We're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about it 3 different ways. I'm going to talk about the structure of the process itself. We're going to talk about its purpose. And in purpose, we're going to say, what does it do? Why do we do it? And what does it do? And then we're going to talk about its significance in terms of community, in terms of the individual. Okay? So, we're going to start with the structure. The rites of passage process. Oftentimes, particularly when working with adolescents, specifically in social work and some of those other areas, and you see this in education, this growing research in education, when people talk about rites of passage, they tend to talk about it in terms of a ceremony, okay, the graduation, and look at that as a rites of passage, and that's typically how we tend to think of rites of passage. We tend to think about the ceremonies that's involved. And that's important. However, you just can't go to school, hang out for 4 years, and then show up at the graduation and expect to graduate. Okay? There's something that has to take place before the ceremony that justifies the ceremony. Okay? So we talk about rites of passage as a process. We're talking about 3 stages if you're following Van Gep's definition of rites of passage. And after Van Gep, there's been those folks, I'm being one of them, that advocated for a 4-stage process. But we'll start with what's this called? Might as well Van Gep. He wrote a book. He's a Dutch anthropologist. He wrote a book in 1908 called The Rites of Passage. It was actually, he's Dutch. It was written in French and published in French. 1908. He was the person that actually coined the phrase, the rites of passage. And he talks about a 3-stage process. One is separation. And the separation stage of the rites of passage, the initiate, I'll call them the initiate, the person who's going through the process, is separated out of their normal routine. Okay? They're taken out of their normal routine. They're separated oftentimes out of their normal peer group and enter into a sacred place, a sacred time, a sacred moment, if you will. There's something that they're taken out of their normal routine. And in this separation stage, they're tested. Okay? If we follow the typical thought about rites of passage in terms of the transition from childhood to adulthood, a child reaches a certain age, And at that age, they then enter into this sacred place, the sacred moment, the sacred time in which the transition is to take place. They're separated out of their community some kind of way, and then they are tested. Okay? You think about a bar mitzvah. We're talking about a bar mitzvah, we're talking about a Jewish boy is separated from his family, and they'll go through some kind of testing. You have to read the Torah in Hebrew. They have to perform certain rituals, and essentially they do this in front of the elders, folks who've already passed, people who already know, teachers, somebody, and they'll either be judged as competent, sufficient, or not. If they're not judged competent, sufficient, then they don't move on. If they're judged competent, sufficient, they pass the test, then they move on. The next stage is a transition. It's called transition. Typically, this is where the ceremony takes place. This is some kind of or what Vanette called the betwixt. You're in between. Okay? Here is where, again, the ceremony tends to take place. The person enters as a non-member, exits as a member. And it is this, again, is what, when people talk about rites of passage, typically is the part that most people focus on, is the ceremony, is the transition to that. Okay? So typically that's where that takes place. The third part reincorporation. Okay? Now that I've transitioned into the next state, I'm reincorporated back into the community, and this is the point where I'm held accountable for being what it is that I transitioned into. Okay. Now, as so there's Van Epp being primarily an anthropologist. Okay. He was looking at this primarily in terms of the rituals that people, the various indigenous people, do to determine roles in the community and those kind of things. So that's why he primarily concerned himself with this fourth phase. Well, actually, some people average is the first phase. So this is preparation. Before you go into separation, you have to be prepared. If you're going to be tested, and you're going to see what it is, people are going to see what it is that you've learned, you have to have been taught, right? So you're using the Jewish bar mitzvah as an example, that at the time of you've gone and you're being tested. A Jewish child is born on a particular day. They know 13 years from now what part of the Torah that child will be reading. That's the expectation. The preparation then becomes, well, he has to go to Hebrew school. He has to be taught Jewish tradition. Okay, all those kind of things take place before then they get to a point where He's tested. Okay? Now, this is a cycle. This is not a linear thing. Because once I'm reincorporated, the phase I enter into becomes preparation for the next stage of life. Okay, so it's an ongoing cycle. So we look at then this process. We see it as an ongoing cyclic process that tends to build on top of each other. And you can describe it as multi-layered, if you will, because these things are not, I may be in preparation, separation, transition stage in terms of manhood, but in terms of my career, I'm still may be in preparation. In terms of me being a father, I may have made the transition as a becoming a married man, but all that is just nothing more than preparation for becoming a father. So it's cyclic, it has multi dimensions to it. It's not a linear, it is not a linear process. This, then this, then this, then you're done. The cyclic in nature. Any questions at this point? Talking about the structure of the rites of passage process. So let's run through this, giving some examples. Let's talk about high school graduation. Okay? What becomes preparation for high school graduation? Well, we'll put high school graduation. High school graduation is really the transition, right? That's the ceremony here. So when we're talking about becoming a high school graduate, it's the process, right? What becomes preparation for becoming a high school graduate?
You have to go through 4 years of school. You have to pass each grade and take exams. And
Okay. Typically, what becomes then separation for a high school graduate?
When you're a senior?
When you're a senior,
Yeah.
what kind of things do you do?
All the preparatory things, like getting your cap and gown and stuff like that, like getting your grades, passing your finals.
Your senior finals, the final exams, those kind of things that you have, which is a little bit different than what is normally the normal, what other students are going through. You're in a separate place in that sense. Transition is then the high school graduation, okay? And typically at the graduation, then the graduates are presented back to the community. You're given some kind of challenge, go forth and do whatever. But at that point, we then hold you accountable to act like a high school graduate. Okay? Typically, when we talk about, or traditionally, let's say it like that. Traditionally, when we talk about folks getting married. Okay? Preparation would be what? Huh?
Dating.
Dating. Okay. What else? What else?
Do you have to go to classes before you get married?
Sometimes. All right, but if somebody told you that somebody's going to get married, you assume that these people are
engaged.
Engaged. You assume before then. Are you looking at somebody who's 10, 11? Are you thinking of that? You think of somebody who is at least some level of adulthood, generally, right? So adulthood becomes preparation for marriage. You assume certain abilities, being able to provide, being able to nurture, being able to care for, so on and so forth. Okay? These kind of things that we expect out of an adult, generally speaking. Separation becomes what? The engagement. Okay? Now you begin to separate yourself out from your normal routines, your buddies, your girlfriends, and so on and so forth. Okay? You attend classes, right? You go before some spiritual elder, some other person, typically, I should say traditionally, you've asked for hand in marriage, you've gotten approval from a family elder, and now you're entered into this separation stage, okay? The testing that goes on now, okay? If y'all can survive the marriage classes, if you can survive planning the wedding itself, okay? The families are now getting together. Mom and dads are meeting, brothers and sisters are meeting, folks, family members are getting to meet other family members. And so now, that's a test, because if they don't get along, that really put a strain on the whole process, okay? So now, and at this stage here, now y'all really be interested. Can these families get together? Can this thing happen? The transition is what?
The wedding.
The actual wedding itself, okay? That's the ceremony, okay? You're something a lot more than just two single people, but you're not married yet. You can walk away here, maybe get some embarrassment, some folks might be mad at you, but there's nothing legal going on. You're not obligated, okay? Even during the marriage, you done said your I do's, and you've gone through that. You can still quit at that point, okay? But when the preacher turns around, or the person presiding says, you may now kiss the bride, I pronounce you man or wife, I present now Mr. and Mrs., okay? At that point, because you entered into it a non-member, but you exited a member, and at that point of reincorporation, we can now, as a community, hold you accountable for being married. If you quit then there's some legal stuff that's going to get involved. Because the society recognizes you as being a married couple. And again, I'm saying tradition. That becomes preparation, marriage becomes preparation then for what?
Parenthood.
Parenthood. Okay? So this becomes a whole cyclic kind of thing that deals on one on top of each other. That's the power of rites of passage. And that's the power, and that is something that is universal. All of us are involved in it. Only real question becomes, are you conscious of it? And do you know what you're being prepared for? Okay? Now, for those of you involved in criminal justice, adolescence, teaching, those kind of things, in psychology actually, okay? Psychology, you talked about Erickson, okay? Erickson, the concept of rites of passage fits very well into his ideas about development. That you have a series of life crises, and until you solve those crises, you don't move on in your development, okay? And rites of passage, we talk about this idea that if you do not, that rites of passage is a part of healthy human development. And if you do not successfully transition from a stage of being a infant or a newborn or fetus to an infant to a small child to a child, from a small child to, or like we say called toddlers, to a child to adolescence, or childhood to adulthood, if you don't make those transitions successfully, your state of consciousness is held back or is trapped at the previous, the last successful passage. Okay? All of you are old enough now. You have friends who graduated from high school, 20-something, but still have the mindset stuck in high school. Okay? They're just an old teenager. That would be somebody we said who's not successfully made the transition into adulthood. And many indigenous societies Your age speaks nothing to the privileges that you have in the community. It is your ability to successfully transition through the various stages that will determine what privileges, responsibilities, rights that you will have within that community. There's a book, Rituals, by Melanoma Some. I'm going to try to spell it. I will not try to spell his first name. Melanoma Some. He has a series of books out, but one is Rituals. He talks about he was somebody from a region in Nigeria who was taken out of his community when he was a child, went to school in England, he graduated, went to the United States, got his PhD, and through that process wanted to then go home to his community, came back, PhD, in all other aspects of his life, successful. But because he had not gone through the adulthood initiation, he was treated as a child. He was 30-something years old, but treated as a child. Until he had gone through the adulthood initiation rites, his community would not recognize him as an adult. Okay? A part of the thing that takes place in, what we say, Western or in modern culture, is that this process, which is often very clearly defined and deliberately practiced within indigenous cultures, has there's various institutions that have taken up over that role. What's one of the institutions, offhand, you think that has taken this role? School. Education is a primary one. Okay?
Church.
The church.
Government.
Government. Okay. The military. Jails. The penal system, in some cases. Gangs. Now, again, this is a process. And there's some other things that go here in terms of the matrix, but we'll say that for another day. But that's the process. The next thing I'm supposed to be talking about is what? Remember, the purpose. Okay, thank you. So, the purpose of rites of passage. Or its function. What happens when somebody goes through this?
I gain knowledge.
You get knowledge, you get a new insight, a new perspective, a different frame of reference. Okay? Why would people get married? Why would you go through all that? To stand in front of a bunch of folks and declare your love and loyalty to one particular person for the rest of your life. And that just be boyfriend and girlfriends for the rest of your life.
Makes taxes cheaper.
Makes taxes cheaper. So there are certain privileges that society will extend to you as a member of this group as compared to not being a non-member. What else?
Someone to help you.
Someone to help you. You gain membership. Okay? What else? A pregnant married woman, a pregnant single woman. Is there a stigma associated with one that's not associated with the other? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. So a part of what Rites of Passage does is provide access or privileges to members as compared to non-members. It provides expectations placed on both as individuals, but also in terms of the community. So as an individual, if I am a member, I can expect certain things from the community. If I've been transitioned, recognized as a man, I expect them to be treated as a man. I expect to sit in on the adult decisions. That's my expectation. The community expectation of me, that if you're a man, you act like a man. You do man things. When men get together, we expect you to be here. When we need a bunch of men to go do something, we expect you to show up. There's certain privileges. We give you a tax break. We won't talk about you behind your back if you're having sex. A number of things. Those are some of the privileges. That's the function. Okay. What are we doing here? What are some of the things that we're doing here? Then, in terms of the community. If I say that I'm going to grant you certain privileges, as being a woman, if you pass the woman process, what have I done as a community? I'm asking you. I made a decision, exactly. If I made a decision about what is a woman and what is not a woman, what have I also done then? I helped define what womanhood is, right? I helped define a role in society. I helped organize society. We helped set certain social norms, boundaries, frameworks, those kind of things. That's a part of what rites of passage, the function of rites of passage. But at the same time, in its most, I'm going to say, ideal form of the process, we've also helped you to better understand your own specific purpose, your own mission in life, you would have a sense of who you are, what you're supposed to be doing, so on and so forth. Okay? So, that's the purpose. And that is, again, universal. It's one of the few things when you talk about human condition, you can speak with any kind of absolute. We're all involved in rites of passage. The rites of passage will do this, will help define purpose and function, okay, in a community, in a society. That's why to each example, you look at when another society wants to commit genocide on another group, or oppress another group, one of the first things they do is attack the process by which children are taught. Okay? If you look at the case of the Indian schools in the United States, the United States government got a bunch of Indian kids, cut off their hair, take them back to the East, and taught them in quote-unquote American ways. Okay? It kills a community. It sets the definitions. So once you then taught them that, you can send them back to the community, and they'll help promote their own community's destruction. Because you already set the purposes for them. In the case of the Aborigines in Australia, same thing. What was done there? Take the Aboriginal kids out of the bush, will civilize them, teach them the correct way of doing things, send them back, and they'll help participate in the destruction of their own community. There's a famous book by Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro. He talks about if you convince a person that he's inferior, you do not have to tell him to go to, you don't have to tell him what his proper place is. He will find it for himself. You do not have to tell him to accept an inferior position. He will assume one for himself. You do not have to tell him to go to the back door. He will go there without being told. And in fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one for his own special purpose. And you deal with this, okay? That's what happens. So the purpose and the function of rites of passage is essentially twofold. One, it helps organize the community. It helps set norms, structures, frameworks from which to view the world. And it also helps the individual to come to know their own specific purpose and role within that community. Okay? And of course, then there's all sets of privileges and expectations and responsibilities that organize amongst these various stages of membership. Okay? So when we talk about rites of passage, its purpose and its function. Talk about then how it, I think I've got into a little bit of the significance. That was the third thing, right? Okay, I got into the significance a little bit. But we're talking about its purpose and function. We see that the educational process has took up this role. Churches have taken up this role. Let's talk about a little bit of the pathology of it then, just on the other side. As I said, it's universal. It's universal, okay? So what happens when a society does not provide rituals and rites of passage process for adulthood, for its youth? What will happen?
The individual is lost.
Individual is lost. Yes.
The people eventually divide into groups and start making their own.
They'll make their own. You'll see it time and time again. There's another book, David Campbell. You remember those day in the life books they used to have? You remember everybody? Okay. Well, there used to be these day in the life. There was a big, I think they did it once, like day in the life of Earth. And it was so popular that they started having day in the life of everything. And there was all these pictures that were taken around the world on a particular day, same day, all around the world. And there was a book that was put together, Day in the Life of Earth. David Campbell did one on the day in the life, on the life cycle, the day in the life of the life cycle, something like that. And essentially was looking at the rites of passage process. Transitions from into the world, birth, transitions into adulthood, transitions into marriage, death, and so on and so forth. And it makes this kind of, there were these Brazilian boys that were they call the street kids in Brazil. And he has a picture of them riding atop of electric cars. And their ritual was that you get on the beginning and see who will ride it the longest without dying, getting shot, that kind of stuff. And he has a caption that says that when a society does not provide death or does not provide transitions into adulthood for children, they'll create them for themselves. Okay? And that's true. Again, this is universal. Nobody cannot go through rites of passage. You cannot be a human and not go through rites of passage. You will go through it. Okay? Now, you can go through it with the guidance of elders and people who at least should have some understanding of life and how to best live it. Or you can go through it with a bunch of your peers who are just as ignorant as you are about life and come up with all kind of crazy manifestations about rituals to prove your manhood or womanhood and so on and so forth. Okay? So, female having a baby, fulfilling her role in society, quote unquote, well then just copy the act and not understand all the stuff that goes into to justify it. Are you following me? Okay. Do you see how this applies to some of y'all in education? We're going to work with children, criminal justice. That if I think that being a man is being tough and being bravado and this kind of stuff, okay? If a society does not provide a rites of passage for me, then what I tend to do? I tend to prove my manhood by doing what? Copying all those symbols that I see out there of what manhood is, without understanding the depth and what justifies it. So if we say a man is somebody who's strong, well, there's qualifications for how you show your strength. But if I don't understand it, I just want to be strong. So what I try to do, I try to pump somebody else out to show them how strong I am. Okay? So we say that back in the 60s we had the black radicals who bragged about how many times they were arrested and how many times how they faced the system and defied the system. Okay? And so they talk about it, they brag about it as part of their badge of honor in terms of how they fought in the struggle. But if you don't provide an understanding for the kids about that, then they'll see you're being defiant as a badge of their adulthood, not understanding that what justifies your defiance was your preparation, your separation, your testing, you getting in front of elders, you learning and doing something for the community. But they'll just see the defiant act as a part of my manhood or womanhood, as case may be, or my adulthood. And I'll just be defiant, even though it's at the expense of the community. So that's the pathology of rites of passage. That it's going to happen anyway. So the onus becomes on who to provide rites of passage. Then. The initiate. Who becomes, where's the onus on providing the rites of passage process? Yeah? Okay. Who is responsible for providing the rites of passage process? The initiate, the child, or the community from which the child comes from? The community. Okay. So it goes back to all the stuff that you see, all the problems you see in children today is a function of the community. Okay? Significance. We talked about, I think I got into significance well enough. Let me give you a couple of references for you to use. You can go to my website, afrocentric.info. From there, there's also go back to NCACROP. Let's go to the National Coalition for African Centered Rites of Passage. The other thing that we haven't talked about briefly, I got 20 seconds. That rites of passage only makes sense within its cultural context. Only makes sense in its cultural context. That the process is universal. It takes place across all kinds of different cultures and everything else. However, a Jewish bar mitzvah only makes sense within the Jewish tradition. You cannot take those same rituals and historical context and place them in with the Maasai or in another group, and it makes sense. The rites of passage process only makes sense within its cultural context, but the process is universal. Thank you.